Hey, welcome out, guys. Welcome out to tonight's coaches call for all of the members here of the coaching program. Thanks for joining us tonight. Obviously, I'm here with Steve, like always, and we're happy to do these weekly coaches calls. In fact, there's always a lot of stuff that we want to cover.
Yeah, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to attend these, and so because of that, we always try to at least put in some effort and try to create trainings for you guys that are meaningful and that you can learn something. So we definitely appreciate you guys all making the time to be here each week.
Yeah, and what we're going to cover tonight is probably going to be a combination of things. We want to cover some content that we can train on in slides, but we also want to look at what's happening as well and use it in real world examples, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's really more related to due diligence as I got thinking about it, but it's sort of related to title research, but we're going to get a chance to talk about it in greater depth. Sorry, here I had the news and announcements. I realized it was partially done, and so I just erased the page. It's easier just to go, because really we're starting to see some auctions that are scheduled. We're starting to see things. I'm actually surprised at the number of counties that have just said that they are almost kind of writing off their whole auction for the year.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. There's others that you can tell are sitting back and waiting, to schedule their auction. So it'll kind of depend on the sale, but I definitely think that once things are cleared up, even just looking at New York, I was just spending a few minutes looking at all the upcoming, and they're all, postponed, waiting to reschedule, and some of them even had notes about, we have not canceled the sale, it's just been postponed,
Yeah, which there are a lot of those that are coming up. I noticed that I was looking for Utah sales today, that a lot of the counties that had sales traditionally that were going supposed to be in the month of May have kind of pushed those out to June, and we're probably going to see that continue, where there is just kind of a domino effect of things getting pushed out a little bit, so the counties are doing them a little bit later than when they might normally, or some of those weird counties that are just canceling it altogether.
Yeah, well, and some states and counties have more flexibility than others. Like Utah's kind of unique because they always have their sales in May.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, within the state law, it's kind of written to hand with May, so they're probably doing some exception to be able to move. You might be able to move it into June, actually. But, there's a certain time frame. But in a place like New York, they can kind of schedule those auctions. They kind of have the same time each year, but they can kind of schedule them also as needed.
Yeah. Something else that's also worth noting here is that for several weeks now, for the last few months, I guess, we've been predicting that all of this would have a positive impact on the competition that we're dealing with directly with other tax sale investors with live auctions and online auctions. And we've started to see some of the results of sales lately, and really I think it just continues to kind of feed that that belief we have that that's going to happen, and we're beginning to see it happen.
Yeah, well, and these are online auctions where, anyone can invest throughout the country. And that's where I think, like, if you actually get out and as these start scheduling these auctions, if if our students kind of look within their area of states that are close by, they're having live sales. I think that attending the live sales, in fact, me and Shade have talked about going out and trying to attend a bunch of sales over the next few months, because there's going to be opportunity at these live auctions where people are afraid to come out. There's going to be a small group there. They're probably going to have some kind of social distancing anyway or whatever, but it could be a real good opportunity to get deals like never before.
Well, yeah, if we're seeing a decrease in online auction,
where smart investors all across the country can bid.
Yeah, where anybody can can participate in live auctions, we're bound to see a dramatic drop, and it could lead to some great deals and some good opportunities. So that's pretty promising stuff. We're also going to look at some of the results. We'll see if we can give you a better idea of what we're talking about. with some of the different places and some of the results that we're seeing and auctions and places that could have really good opportunities that maybe historically have not had such great opportunities, or at least with too much competition to really for profitable opportunities anyway.
Yeah, at least what we consider.
Yeah. So due diligence is something that we get a lot of questions about, and I think it's something that a lot of people feel unsure about. The reality of it is it's fairly simple. There's only so much information that we can gather about properties, and so part of it, I think, is just about understanding what all of that information is, so that you have that sense when you've gathered it, there's a sense of completion there.
Well, yeah, and with certain areas, well, I guess every area and every county, you're going to have certain limitations on how much you can research.
Yeah, it's always limited by what the county makes available.
Yeah, and sometimes you might be able to research everything you need to. Sometimes you might be able to just research what you can, and then you need to make a decision based on the property, based on the cost, based on any type of potential thing. And really all we're looking is for those governmental liens.
Yeah.
Do I take a risk and just buy it, or do I go ahead and spend the money to get a title search done or a lien search done to see what's on the property?
Yeah, it's actually a question we get all the time is, when are title searches appropriate? When do I need to worry about them? And really our views on title searches have evolved dramatically, over the years. Just I think as we understand the process better, and as we get better at finding the information that we're interested in, then it becomes less and less relevant or important, at least in some investments. In some investments, it's no brainer; you automatically do it.
Yeah.
And so it does change quite a bit based on situation. But to start off with, though, we talk about the stages of due diligence that we do, and the first stage of due diligence are basically those 6 steps that we go through in basic property research. We've done webinars in the past on that. And then a stage 2 would be a title search or title research, we could say, which can either be professional or done by the investor if records are available. And then third stage would be an on-site evaluation, meaning that we're either laying eyes on the property or we're sending somebody to lay eyes on the property and to get an on-site evaluation performed. But it seems like most of the most of the confusion that people have is related to stage 2.
Yeah.
It's usually about what to do there because, when it comes to title searches, it's something that people are familiar with, but and maybe even had done before if they've sold a property or something like that, but there's not a lot of understanding about exactly why or what it's needed for and what the use is for us as investors.
Well, and the one thing about most title searches, they're getting a full title search because they're getting title insurance. And so because they're getting title insurance, they're going to go back 30, 50, 100 years and verify all aspects of the title. We're not interested in that. That's a huge expense. All we're really interested in is those governmental liens. And so if we do have to get a title search, what we're really focusing on is what's called a lien search, and really that's kind of what we are looking for.
Yeah, I think it's a good point in that it's different kinds of transactions. If there's a transaction where you're selling properties for full value, and there's going to be title insurance that involved, then title searches are kind of a no-brainer. They just become part of the transaction. But that's of course when everything's being done, in a traditional transaction that is going to involve a warranty deed. But when you're dealing with tax deeds instead of a warranty deed, it becomes an issue because, like Steve mentioned here, there's a lot of information that goes into, a professional title search. And part of what you're paying for there is for them to dig into the property's history, but it's also to try to present all of that information that they've been able to pull up into a format that you can make sense of.
Yeah. And so if you were to talk to most of the title companies, they're probably going to, suggest or go ahead and talk about doing just a regular title search or a full title search. And what we need to explain to them, and because this is going to affect the cost, and this is really what it comes down to. Sure, it would be great to have all this information. In fact, if you are buying a property and you go through and decide to do quiet title, you're going to have to get a full title search. And so you'll probably have a full title search done, before you actually even start the quiet title process. But for this, we're mostly interested in those liens. And so when we do have to do with it, that's kind of what we're trying to minimize our cost and everything. If title searches were $20, then we'd have them done on every property.
Yeah, absolutely. If it was that easy to do, it would be very easy just to kind of have them ordered up for for any property you're going to invest in, because you could absorb that kind of a cost. But the reality is it's never that simple in terms of the information that we're looking for. It's also never that inexpensive. The cost tends to follow how easy or difficult it is to obtain the information, and beyond that, it's also something that we may need to hire locally for. It's not necessarily something you can always just use an outside firm, some national company. There's not very many title companies, I think, that have the ability to just pull a title anywhere. In fact, I don't know that any of them do that. They're all going to have to outsource it to somebody close there to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some, online records within title companies that in certain areas. But like Shade said, it's really going to be specific focused, especially if it's in an area that doesn't have a lot of those records online. They're going to actually may need to have somebody in some cases actually go down to the county courthouse in person to review those. And so it's going to depend. And that's also why if we are looking for a local title search, title company costs can vary from title company to title company. So we recommend at least getting 2 to 3 different people, calling them up, quickly explaining that you're looking for only a lien search. You're only looking for those governmental liens, and how much would it cost to do a lien search? And if it's a good price, then you can go and have it done. But it's good to check around, because we've had people quote it at $250, and then you come back and you can get one done for $75.
Yeah. We don't have a specific company that works here that we refer people over to, because
it's going to be specific on the property.
Yeah, it's so specific to the area. When we're looking into companies that might be able to do something like that, we're always going to look into that local area first, because they're the ones that, if we are going to get one, it's going to have to come from them.
Well, and if there is any online records, if they have any type of databases that are hooked up to the county, they're the ones that are going to have it.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking, let's say we're looking in Forest City, Arkansas, or somewhere like that. A place in California, they're not going to have those records, but somebody who's built in, who's dealing with the county on a regular basis, doing title searches, doing properties, doing all the paperwork for real estate deals, then they may have those type of records, or at least quick access to those records.
Yeah. In fact, the way that we generally treat this is, that most of your professional title searches are not going to be very practical for most of your tax deed investments, at least a lot of your inexpensive tax deed investments, or lower price, you could say under $10,000.
Yeah, well, and also kind of depending on what type of risk that property could have.
Yeah.
If we're looking at, let's say, a structured property and a home or something, and within that, in that state, things like utility liens can attach to it because it was a government utility, or anything like that. That's where it could come into place, or if we're looking at a place and you can see that a lot of city work has been done.
Yeah.
That's where, but even within there, we could contact the city to verify. There's ways to go around it.
Yeah. Our first inclination is always going to be to gather any information that we can on our own first, or to see what we can find, to see what is available, to see what we can access, because that's ultimately going to be, the big determining factor on, really on how long it's going to take us to perform due diligence there. Because if the records are easily accessible, then we can probably find that stuff pretty quickly once we know where it's at.
Yeah.
But if that stuff's not available, then there's no amount of time that's going to make the difference. We're going to have to hire it out.
Yeah, well, and if you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars, I mean, if we're spending, a couple $1,000s on a property, then, it's a couple $1,000s. But if we're spending $10,000, $15,000 on a property, and there's some type of potential risk where there could be larger type liens on it, then spending the extra $100 is going to be worth it.
Or also, if we automatically have plans to pursue quiet title anyway, we might as well have it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least,
Well, and it kind of depends on too, as well as if we're looking at an auction property that may or may not. I mean, this is part of the problem. If we knew we could get a title search done and that property was guaranteed to sell, and that we could get it at our price, then you'd have a title search done on every meaningful property. But the chances of it, redeeming within the auction, plus all of those other things that are done up until then, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, you can't invest a lot of money into potential investments.
Yeah, what if you wanted to bid on 10 properties?
Right. Yeah, it's too much cost that's involved there, and no real way to predict that. Yeah, you do kind of run into a problem if you can't access the information online. Then really, in order to find the information, you would probably have to hire it out, and so that's something that you'll have to account for. I mean, one thing that you can count on if that's the case is that there's probably not a lot of people that are willing to do the same thing. So there's probably available property there, but it's going to be a pain.
Yeah, well, and it might be worth it depending on the real estate value. Those are all things that we need to look into. I mean, if it's an over-the-counter property where you can buy it directly off the list, well, then you might, versus going to the auction, at least you have a chance of buying it.
Yeah. Now, if you remember, title is the term that, it's a generic legal term to convey ownership over something. So when we're talking about, title search information, what we're really talking about is the ownership information and that history. And the truth is, anybody can look into the ownership history of a property. Title, anybody can do title research. The availability of the records is the primary thing, that people need access to in order to perform it. What we're really talking about there is just searching through some of that ownership history.
Yeah. I mean, if all of the records were online, then we wouldn't really need to. We could just do investor title searches. That's one thing that is nice about states like Florida, where they have a lot of that information online, is that you can go research the property owner's name. You can pull up all of the information, see what the lien amounts are, and so as more and more counties are putting that online, it makes it a lot easier for us.
This is a little bit out of order here. Let me jump ahead here. So when we're dealing with one of the important things when it comes to being able to research and perform title research is understanding the different types of records that we work with, and so that you can differentiate between types of records and understand exactly what you need to access, what you can access, what's out there.
Yeah, well, and some are accessible in almost every county. Like your assessor record, that information, some of the tax records, most counties are going to have. Now, it may be just very, very generic, basic information, but they're all going to have at least some of that, or most of them will.
Yeah, especially if it's included in the tax cell.
Yeah.
Because they understand that investors need to be able to perform research and need information about the property. And so, yeah, it's almost always included, and counties are always making that easier for us. So, the property assessment is something that we use all the time. It's generally the first record that we encounter about the property when we're trying to value it, which is handy because it's also the one that probably tells us the most about the property valuation.
Yeah.
But it's not always the only thing that we're going to check, especially depending on what kinds of investments we're doing. For instance, when we go to buy tax deeds, we can usually safely assume that the opening bid amount is going to include all the taxes and fees that are owed.
Yeah.
But if we're not buying tax deeds, and let's say we're buying liens, then we need to know, we need to be able to look up the tax history on the property so that we can know exactly what the roll-up is before we buy liens on it.
Yeah, especially in areas or states that have a history of roll-up. like Florida or Arizona, some of those states where,
Yeah, where you can accumulate 6-7 years.
yeah, like, South Carolina, we wouldn't really be worried because it's a 1 year, or well, maybe one that has a 2-year redemption period. Or unless there's something with it that we should. I mean, it's good to always look back, but knowing a little bit about that state is going to help you in how you search that particular list.
Yeah. So the tax history is something that can come into play at different points, but normally the property taxes should be zeroed out as, when you take over as the new owner of the property after the tax sale. It's intended to work that way anyway. Now, the other kind of record type that we deal with regularly are property deeds. And property deeds play an important role here, but they're a type of legal record, really.
Yeah.
They're a type of legal record. And the other kind that we have are court motions and other legal records, I guess you could say. There are any kind of motion by the court that's recorded sometimes, can be a record that we can use.
Well, and this is where we're going to search for liens, for mortgages, for anything like that. On using the property owner's name. That's the same thing that the title company is going to do. If they're to actually go down and do like an old style title search, is they're going to search the owner's name for any information that's connected to that name.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, now also this is a good question, because I think one of the questions that we have here is about clearing the title after the sale. And this is something it's really important to know and to understand. So clearing the title after the sale is different in every state. Okay, now most states have a similar structure in place where you have, deeds that are warranted, and then you have deeds that are not warranted, and those. Clearing up the issues on a property that doesn't have a warranty to turn it into a warranty. Every state has that ability, and it's a quiet title action everywhere you go. Although in some places, though, they'll call it what do they call it? Confirming the patent.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of Mississippi.
Yeah,
I think most places, it's called quiet title.
Yeah, now it's the same overall idea is in each state, but the specifics are really, are down to state law.
Yeah, there's going to be some things that are all used in common as far as sending out notices to anyone that is the past owner or has past interest in the property. Now, these notices don't give them any rights. It's just letting them know that the property is going to go through this quiet title action. Because what quiet title action is, it's kind of like a lawsuit. It's kind of like, in a way, you are suing, not suing, that's too strong a word, but
well, it is a lawsuit.
Yeah, you're suing, essentially, not suing for money, but essentially making a claim that you own this property, that you're the only one that has interest in the property, and you're sending out notices to everyone else that used to own the property, had interest, saying, hey, I own this now, here's how I own it, I bought it at the tax sale, and and if you dispute, and you have 14 days to dispute that. Now, most people aren't going to do that because they've already lost their property at the tax sale and they have nothing to dispute. The only way somebody could dispute that is if they had been paying the property taxes the whole time, and that wasn't recorded. But that's very, very, very rare, and so it's not something you're going to really worry about.
Yeah, but every single state, though, has a process for clearing the title, after the purchase, or making it an insurable title again.
Yeah.
They all have that process that is in place, and it's always going to involve, probably hiring an attorney, and the attorney kind of going through the process like what Steve described. Where they go before the court and they send out those notices, and so you can always do that. But again, how long it takes and how expensive it is could vary quite a bit in places, because it's not always the same. And yeah, we always find states that do things a little backwards or that are totally different.
Yeah, well, and just to be safe, I would say it's at least 2,000. It could very well be more than that. It could be less, but it's really going to depend on the state. But if you go in there thinking that then that's going to help you decide which properties you're going to go through quiet title. And you should at least have a clue on property before you even buy them, on which properties you're going to go through quiet title and which ones you're just going to sell as is.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that can help, at least understanding the court systems just a little bit, because just in the way that understanding county governments can help you a little bit, understanding how the courts work, you know, can also help you. And this is, you know, the image we have up here is how most states have a court system that's like this or that's similar to this. So again, it's not going to be the same everywhere, but they're usually going to have, you know, this. And so what you generally have is first that separation between, you know, civil court and justice court, you know, or, you know, criminal court, basically. But then you also have a number of smaller courts, you know, that fit underneath that criminal court, you know, like the family court, juvenile, municipal court, you know, probate. Anyhow, there are those all, and they basically work their way up. You know, every state is going to have, you know, an intermediate appeals court that is going to act like a higher level of justice, you know, that you could submit things to if a case, I guess if you want to appeal something. And then every state ultimately has a Supreme Court as well, you know, that sees the highest cases. When we're looking at the property records, what we're dealing with here are legal records that are recorded through, not through small claims court necessarily,
no, it's going to be through the municipal court.
Yeah, it's going to be through the municipal
Justice
court. It's going to be based on amounts owed. Oh, let me see another one of the questions here. Okay, so if we're looking for something like an IRS lien, you know, Charles has a question here about an IRS lien. An IRS lien is a federal lien, right? So it's one that's placed there by the federal government. And what that really means is, I don't know if there's going to be an easy way for us to see that.
Most counties post them.
Yeah,
to begin with,
which I think is why they do that.
Yeah, and you know, with an IRS lien, it's going to be your least common lien, and it's also the least risky lien. So, you know, I'm usually way more concerned about something like, you know, city liens or state liens that could affect it than an IRS lien, because with an IRS lien, it's really just going to be a matter of time. Now, it is going to put a dent in how soon you can sell the property, because you've got to send out a letter to the IRS letting them know you bought it, give them the chance to either buy it back or release the lien. So, you know, with that type of scenario, they'll either, most of the time, they'll release the lien unless the property has high value. So if the property does have a high enough value, then the IRS could go ahead and sell it at the IRS sale. But the IRS maybe sells 30 properties total a month in all of the United States, and there's thousands of property with IRS liens.
Yeah, in fact, normally, because they're liens that would be, you know, that are kind of difficult to find through any kind of a county record, you know, they're not always going to show up on a lot of this stuff. But the county will know about them and will generally notify people before the sale. In fact, the counties almost always notify you in the tax sale list if there's an IRS.
Yeah, as you're looking at, you know, looking on the California list, they'll say it. And there's usually, you know, a handful of properties that do, and they're usually the more expensive properties on the list.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that would be more likely to be a candidate to have an IRS lien.
Yeah. In fact, normally we'll either see it when we're initially looking at the tax sale list, or it may be as we're gathering additional information on it. Like, for instance, sometimes we'll be able to find IRS information in the Excel downloads on the list. You know, it'll have a little column there in a part of the list there for any of the liens that have IRS liens. I mean, any of the properties that have IRS liens. You know, we'll have something marked there.
I've never bought one with an IRS lien. You know, I mean, it's just not as common, you know, maybe 1%. So there is a risk out there, but it's not one that we're as concerned about as some of the others. Yeah. So once we've got the tax assessor's records and we're looking at them, what's important to us, or what is it we're looking for? Really, what we're doing is when we start looking at county assessment records, we're immediately looking for red flags to disqualify properties. You know, we're always looking for stuff that might disqualify the property, so we're not wasting additional time. You know,
so we can basically eliminate wasting time, focus on properties that might work. And so we're always looking for things that are going to disqualify the property. And primarily though, we're also going to use that information to gather other information about the property. So, this is where we're looking for things like the value and to make sure that the numbers work, because ultimately that's really what the most important thing we're looking at in the assessment.
Yeah, well, when Shay talks about we're always looking to find these red flags, your very most important asset is your time. And so you can actually, I mean, we're guilty of spending a lot of time looking at properties, that maybe those red flags were there and we continued looking into them. And so as you're going through that, if it's an obvious red flag, then just move on to the next property.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, so the process we're talking about right now is the process that we're going to go through to find a state lien. And so, in other words, let me show you here. We're going to kind of talk about these steps right here. We've got 6 steps here that take us through some title research that we perform. And so the first step is in pulling up the assessor's record of the property assessment. And the second step is going to be to locate or pull up the property deed. And so let's show you how, kind of how this works here. And we can also look at some of the results from the sale. In fact, we're going to go and look at Palm Beach County. They had a bunch of properties that that sold at much different prices than what they've been selling in past sales.
Yeah.
But here's just a general look at what we have here on the property assessment. One of the main things we're looking at here, though, is the sales history on the property. There's a number of different reasons for that. It tells us how much the property sold for, but there's also more reasons than that to look at the sales history.
Yeah, well, also in this type of sales history, we can click on that book number, pull up the deed very quickly.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we pull it up, is because the deeds themselves are usually going to be linked directly to that sales history so that we can pull it up immediately. It makes it really easy to find. So we look at the sales history, but we're also looking it up because it tells us something about the ownership history of the property and how difficult or how complicated the process of clearing the title might be. So we can get an idea here of what that might be like based on what's happened in the past here with the property. So like this one, we can see that it had warranty deeds up until 2005, and it looks like maybe some kind of a foreclosure.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. It says Forest Hill Gardens East Condo Association with a certificate of title, for 5,000. So that was definitely some type of sale. I almost wonder if the condo foreclosed on it or something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that the condo may have, the association may have foreclosed on the property because there was too much owed in delinquent taxes on the property, which maybe could have been because the property taxes weren't paid basically from the time of 2005 on.
Yeah.
But either way, what we know about this property here is that there have been 2 transfers since the property had a warranty deed. One of them looked like it was a foreclosure, and then one of them is a quitclaim deed, but it's also for $118,000. So it's not a small amount quitclaim deed. It's kind of a big amount for a quitclaim deed.
Yeah, well, it's also, you can see by the owner, it's an investment company, or at least appears to be an investment company. So, if this property is going up to the deed sale, whatever happened to the investment company, they haven't been able to pay the property taxes on
it. Yeah. So, okay. So what we're going to do here now is I'm just going to pull up and we're going to kind of dive directly into these records so that we can show you here. Exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so let's say we're looking at, let's look at this property right here. Okay, so opened up at 10,000, sold for 48,000 today. Actually, is that the one I wanted to look at? No, let's look at this one. Okay, this one's at Forest Hills, another condo, right? And this particular condo, it looks like opened for 15,000, sold for 45. And now here is the record that we're looking at here. And oh, this is actually the same one. So, you know, we can see, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we wanted here. So,
So it is a condo then?
Yep, it's a condo. Now, there's a couple different ways that we're going to go about finding information about this property, but the ownership history is kind of where that begins for us. It's because, you know, we can see who the owner of the property is and research them.
Well, and one thing about a condo that at least we're not going to have to worry about is we're not going to have to worry about a city grass cut lien or something like that, because, you know, the chances of a condo having some type of city lien is pretty rare. So that's probably not going to be something that we're going to have to worry about.
Yeah. Now, one of the ways that we can find, liens, like for instance, let's say that there was some kind of a lien against the property, like I don't know, certain liens will show up sometimes in the deed. As we go to read through the deed, we can find different issues or things, encumbrances that could be attached to the property.
They can see that this was sold from, you know, by the condo association to the investor.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can see here, you know, so we've got the description here for it.
Does it show how much down there at the bottom, how much they paid?
Well, it says $10. It doesn't, but they obviously did it for like 118,000. You know, was the amount that they actually sold it.
That's because they're just doing the quick claim deed and just doing the $10.
Yeah. Now, so far we haven't seen any kind, but you can always find information about the property there, you know, by reading the deed. If we wanted, we could also look at this older one here, the $5,000 foreclosure. But sometimes this is where we'll identify issues with the problem. I mean, issues with the property. Or liens or things that easements sometimes we'll find in the deed, but
well, one thing as well is we're probably not going to really be worried about looking on liens at the condo association, because when they sold it, even though they sold it as a quick claim deed, it's probably because they got it through a foreclosure through one of their foreclosure set. You know, they kind of foreclosed on it, similar to kind of like a tax deed foreclosure, and were able to sell it. But who we would search is that investment company.
Yeah. In fact, when you go to transfer ownership, the same things are going to apply. If there are back taxes, are generally going to have to be brought current in order to transfer ownership. You know, that's always going to be true. But there is a way that we can check, though, to find out about liens. You know, specifically, and the way we would do that is by looking up, you know, the owner of the property and anything that they might own to try to look for liens under legal records.
Well, and also because they paid 118 for it, you know that, you know, really probably what the issue was changing that quick claim deed, going through quiet title, you know, maybe a little fix up or something. But the condo with that price, the condo association was selling a usable property, you would imagine. Otherwise, the investor is pretty foolish.
All right, now what we're going to do here to look for additional liens or issues with the property is we need to be able to look up or search through the legal records and the owner of the property, so that we can try to match up any kind of lien that we can find in the legal records under that owner's name and match it up to the property address or location. So if I just type in Palm Beach, Florida legal search, and what we have here is something we can begin searching here. And what we want to search is under the name, and we can use a pretty wide criteria here. But under last name or company name is where we would enter that. and I think it was FHB Investments LLC. You know, let's see if that pulls up anything. No search results. I don't know if we're looking in the correct place here. Let's see. If I'm looking at the correct kinds of cases here.
Try take racing and putting in the first name and just see if it does anything different.
Yeah, there's gotta be something wrong with my, you know, because it.
Well, it might not have anything against him. It may only be you know, he bought it to buy this one property and there's not any liens against it, but you could try putting in the first name, you know, instead of doing the last name, company name, just try it in the first name and see if it may not do anything.
No.
Try a different property.
Yeah, let's see. Now, it could very well be though that they don't have that.
Try that Patty Barrington just to see if we can pull up some, you know, right below it. Even though just a past owner, just to see.
All right, let's try Patty Barrington. All right, last name. Let's just try Barrington. Let's try that.
I'm sure that'll pull up a ton of them.
All right, so and now what we're going to do here is if it pulls up too many, you know, like you know, it's going to make it more time consuming for us. Then we can go back, refine our search, and try to
add Patty.
You know, yeah, add Patty there to it.
Oh wow.
Well, let's try this then. Let's try P.
Well, she might not have. I think it has something though.
Well, maybe it's listed differently here.
Well, from there, you know, it's only 3 pages. So if we really wanted to, we were actually interested in the property, we would go through and look through these pages quick and look for a pet, you know, a pet.
Yeah, well, in fact, and if Patty Barrington's the owner there, and we go through the pages and we can't even find, you know, anything associated with Patty or anything else there, we can pretty well assume that the owner doesn't have any kind of lien like that because it would have been announced in court, and so there'd have to be a record of it, and it would be attached to the owner's name.
Well, and you can see underneath these here all the different types of cases. You can see the HR foreclosure, 50 grand underneath the circuit court. You know, there's traffic infractions, eviction notices, you know, any type of public record. But if there's some type of lien there, you would see, you know, some type of lien there through the city.
Yeah. Now there are a few properties in here that there were pieces of land that didn't get any. You know, they didn't get any bids. You know, and we could probably look at some of these now. In terms of HOAs, HOAs are the way that it's supposed to work is you should never be responsible for fees that were owed on the property prior to your purchase of the property. You know, so shouldn't be an issue.
Well, and with HOAs, we always call beforehand. Yeah. You know, we try to build a relationship with them and kind of figure out, let them know, hey, I'm interested in buying this property. You just want to know what your fees are, you know, what's the requirements. You know, if you can get in good with them, they may let you know a lot about that property that can be very helpful in buying with it. And also, depending on how they react, that'll kind of give you an idea of how easy this HOA is going to be to work with. The HOA can't go ahead, you know, they've tried to go after these fees and they've lost in court a couple of times now in Florida. Florida is the only place where we know of the HOAs really tried to do it. But in those cases, they've lost. But that's the reason we give them a call to kind of figure that out beforehand and at least see how easy they are to work with.
Yeah, I think it's always worth learning everything you can about the HOAs in the area, because if you're going to buy property there.
Well, and especially if you know, if they've already heard from you and say, hey, I'm interested, versus you calling up the HOA after about it, hey, I bought this, you know, if you've already talked to them beforehand, expressed, hey, I really like this area, you know, and kind of build a relationship, then if you do end up winning, they're going to be easier to work with. HOAs can be, I mean, if you've lived in one and dealt with a bad HOA, you know, I've had to deal with some a few years ago in one of the houses that I lived in, and you know, it's almost like, you know, the guy in the HOA was his own little sheriff's guy. You know, I mean, he was going around kind of, so they can be difficult. And so if you've got an idea and kind of build a relationship, it'd help.
Yeah, they can be difficult, you know, and they can also be a pain to kind of fight with here. Okay, let's pull up here, pull up another record here. And show, so we can see here, let's try it here with another property here. We've got Gene Forrester. Pull up another search here. I think that was how it was spelled. Let's see. Yeah, Forrester, okay. Let's see how many, we've got tons of them there.
Could try putting Gene. Yeah, she's been busy.
Okay, so here we've got Gene Forrester. Now we can also check and make sure that it's listed the same way.
Yeah, in fact, you know, if sometimes, you know, sometimes they'll have a middle initial, and if it doesn't pull anything up, we'll try it without the middle initial, or we'll try it just the last name. You know, we'll try it a few different ways to see.
Okay, now this is also where we're going to be looking at the types of cases. You know, so if you guys can see, what we're looking at right here are the case types, the court type right here, and then the case number right here. And so what we're looking for here are for any liens or claims. Basically, if we kind of go through these, we can get an idea too of what's happened. But what we're looking for are for any of these that that might be a lien against the property. We can see some foreclosures.
Well, there's a bunch. Well, they're Wells Fargo, Bank of New York, whatever that one is.
You know, the Dutch Bank.
Yeah, Dutch Bank. You know, so it looks like she possibly had several mortgages out on different properties with different banks.
Yeah, and what we'd probably do is look at a few of these here. So let's see, civil court. Let's.
You know, none of them look like they're actually anything, at least what we've seen so far. I guess that, no, it's traffic. None of them look like liens.
Circuit civil, you know, let's
like
see.
the real property foreclosures. Those aren't going to be liens that at least survive.
Yeah, these are more like bank foreclosures. When we see
and they're closed too, so you know they might have been opened when they started the foreclosure. She worked it out, you know, before it went through.
Yeah, they're no longer, none of these are open any longer. And let's see here. Oh, she had a lien in here, like a grass cut lien or something that we could use. But they're not there on all of the properties.
Well, and some, you know, some cities are way more active at trying to send people out there and putting liens on than other cities. One city is Jacksonville. Jacksonville, you know, you always want to search. In fact, they actually put them within the county records a lot of times, so it's easier, the city liens that are on them, because you know they have a code enforcement that's very active and goes out and hits up everyone, you know.
Yeah. You know, so one of the things that you can see here under the case style, I mean, you can almost kind of see some of these are, you know, like bank cards or different private entities that are trying to go after the person, and it'd be that kind of a suit, not the kind with where you've got a county or city government that is issuing a lien against property.
No, even the small claims is nothing.
No.
But you know, that's good news from an investment standpoint. What we could go back is, if we wanted to, we could check, you know, that Harrison Michael, because he has a quit claim when there's two quit claim deeds in a row, you know.
Yeah.
So that Harrison Michael. Oh, and then Gene owned it before.
Oh, the Michael Hansen there, you mean?
Oh yeah, Michael Hansen. Just look at that. Gene owned it before.
Oh yeah. Right,
sold it in 2012, then bought it back in 2014. You know, that might have been some type of family thing.
Yeah, but yeah, well, what we could do is we could look up. Was it SON? or S-E-N, let's see, that was
So,
yeah, S-O-N, and then
Michael.
Michael, okay. All right. And see if we see anything here that might be related to the property.
eviction, that's not traffic. American Express, no.
I wonder if the eviction is on the same property or not.
No, because he sold it back to her in 2014. That was 2016.
There's a foreclosure. And one thing we don't see are any government or county, you know, over here on the.
Oh, he's got a
right.
couple pages though.
Does he?
Yeah, see?
Oh, yes.
Wonder if Gene did too. We didn't know.
Yeah, that.
Now, see that other circuit, something like that, we may look at just because we're not 100% positive, you know. It's probably not a lien. Now it's closed too, but.
Yeah, part of the challenge is when you're dealing with an area, it's about knowing how exactly they list stuff.
I really don't think these people have liens.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything so far. Yeah, we haven't seen anything so far that looks like any kind of a city or county lien placed against either, you know, any of the names that are associated with the property.
Well, one thing as well is you're looking through, let's say that there was a lien, you know, if it being open or closed is going to make a difference.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You know, that is a factor as well. You know, so that's a condo association that owned, you know, the owner of this one or that sold it.
If they're the ones that's losing it.
I don't know. Yeah, essentially, let me show you guys here, and we'll talk just for a second here. We've only got a minute left here. It's just about the kind of process that we go through here. Yeah, so generally what we're doing there, we just at least read through the deeds to see if we can find any information in there that may tell us more about the property. You know, it can give us an idea of what the history is, you know, how the property was sold, you know, what kind of instrument was used, whether it was a warranty deed or, you know, some kind of a non-warranty deed.
Yeah.
You know, it can also be important, but it can also mainly we're looking for stuff related to the owner's name, though, if we're going to be trying to find any kind of a lien.
Yeah, and what we like to do is we like to go back at least until there was a warranty deed. So, you know, if there was 2 or 3 transactions with quitclaim deeds, then we're probably going to search every single name, even though it may have been years past, you know, and within so many years, things like city liens, you know, do drop off,
Yeah.
you know. So there could be liens that have passed their point to collect on them anymore, but we're still going to want to go through and check just to verify.
You know, we can also see if there is some kind of a break in the chain of title. You know, if it's not listed to who it says it's supposed to be listed to. If there was somehow something got recorded incorrectly, or, you know, also this could become an issue if you have a lot of quitclaim deeds.
Yeah, well, that's also one thing is we're looking at that deed. We're going to check to make sure, you know, as we clicked on and saw those deeds, we're going to check to make sure that the name on the deeds is the same. So when we were looking at that one deed with Gene, I think it was, you know, we could see that the condo association's name was on there, and it was, you know, or whoever it was, that one that was the condo association sold to that person.
Yeah.
You know, we could see it there within the deed.
Yeah, another question here is what other liens can survive child support or alimony judgments? That's a really good question, you know, because really we just don't really know exactly, other than government
Florida,
liens.
they don't, you know, at least we've never seen that, you know. Usually it's just going to be your governmental lien, but, you know, every state could be a little bit different.
Yeah, well, for instance, the main thing is whether it's a government entity that's issuing the lien, because if it's issued by a government entity, then that judicial foreclosure is not going to have the power to extinguish it. So that's why, that's why we look out for those, is just because they have that power to survive it. But primarily though, the only way that we can really find out though is just to look for court records associated with that person's name, and to find any kind of a lien that's there. And that's kind of the main thing that we do when we're trying to do research on the title of our property, is determine that everything there matches and that it works, but then also just figure out if there are any liens we can find associated with that person's name.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we'll have everybody on the, I'm sure if you guys want, on the weekly webinar here in just a minute.
Yep. Thanks again.